Board games, board games. I might be talking about board games and redesigning, but I'm not gonna shout. This is a person you may have seen, if only right now, but it's Matt Green. Matt Green, you'll seen a few seconds ago. I'm not saying that Matt's a person you know, but hopefully by the end of this show you will have some secrets that may be spilled. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it says, wherever you are. 10 a.m. ish UK time. Time for Busy Beats and Board Game Blether. And today is another one of those shows where there's not much of a topic. Really, it's just about meeting someone. Matt Green, game designer, husband, urban entomologist, and I thought we'd talk about early memories. We'll introduce the redesign contest and talk about that a bit more tomorrow. We'll talk about why you design and your manner of designing, and we'll talk a bit more about other passions. So thank you for joining me, Matt.
That's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. I can't help but think there are some other Z-list guests out there going, what, they got Matt on before me? I mean, come on. But yeah, it's this is going to be. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, I mean, those people didn't get in touch. And, so just to clarify, the reason that I have you on is because of one game in particular that I thought would be interesting to chat about, which is Flicky Spaceships, which has a parallel with a game with, I guess it's now called Last Bug Standing in the Circle of Doom. It used to be called Yo Dog. I heard you like moving gnomes. So move a gnome to move a gnome to move a gnome to maybe remove a tile. And that kind of tells you how that game of mine works.
I'm glad. No, Last Bug Standing, absolutely. My other passion is entomology, so that's what I get paid to do for a living. So I'm all about the bugs. So that one was straight on the wish list.
I have to admit,
that's going to be great.
It's more of bug-eyed monsters. It's kind of aliens. It's an alien landscape, and you've got to stop the evil humans from destroying you.
Ooh, all right. I might have some. Okay, that's going to be great actually, because I might have some philosophical differences on that one. Basically, I work in pest control, so this is going to be great. I can't wait.
Well,
I honestly
they
can't
aren't
wait.
actual insects. They are, just to clarify, this is not meant to be a real statement on insects or those. It's bug and monster. But who is the monster? It's rendered in an 80s style manner, but we're not here to talk about my stuff. So, quickly, for people who've never heard of you or know what the redesign contest is, could you give a quick introduction of yourself and also what happened with the genesis of Flicky Spaceships?
Ooh, well, I'm an amateur game designer, I suppose, in that respect. I do it for fun. I work. You usually have a design partner for this sort of stuff, and if it ever stops being fun, I'll stop doing it. But it's certainly not my full-time job, and I never ever want it to be either. My first job out of university was with Wizards of the Coast, of all things, because
Wow.
Yeah, Magic came out when I was doing my A levels, which is
so this was with a UK branch.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I was the customer services guy for Wizards of the Coast for about 14 months.
That's amazing. So did you have to know all of their things? Because there was a time when how many CCGs did they have at the time?
Oh man, loads. So there's Magic, Vampire: The Eternal Struggle. You got Netrunner, BattleTech, C23. No one remembers that. Hercules, Xena.
Oh yeah.
There were.
But Hercules and Xena were the same system, weren't they?
They were. Yeah, that's it. They were the same. They were the same system, which was great. You could mix and match the cards. So I demoed those an awful lot of the time, which was actually really good fun. The C23 was the best one. That was a sort of a comic book sci-fi game. And they were great games to demonstrate. But yeah, that was quite something until the sort of the reality of the board game industry got to me, and I went back to university to do something more relevant to what my degree was. But
and what was that reality? Just that you're not going to be able to support a family on it, or?
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, essentially, if you want, yeah. I mean, it's I was working customer services and events, so I'd be answering the phone from Monday to Friday, and then going out to events on the weekend. And it was weird. I mean, I left Wizards with 44 days of accrued leave. I had just no time. My dad, I was living at home at the time. My dad and my sister used to joke that I'd sort of come home, fall asleep on the sofa, and have something to eat, and then go back to work for 7 days in a row. They would essentially just wouldn't see me over the weekends as well. And it was quite mad. It was quite a weird thing. I'm not going to put this in a negative light. I met some of the most amazing people doing that job. You just meet so many people, and I still am friends with them to this day, and it's fantastic. Which is great. I went out for a curry with my ex-boss and a colleague that ended up being my best man. I went out with them for 2 nights ago.
Let's hear some name dropping.
Some name dropping, yeah.
Hello, Yoda. It is lovely to see you, and I hope you are generally well.
Excellent. Good morning, all. Yeah, that was it. But essentially, it was a customer service role. So I was either going to, and it was for the UK rather than the US.
Let's quickly introduce the Flicky Spaceships and the redesign for that. So this start. Oh, do you still have the original components?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the published game, but yeah.
Amazing.
Oh.
Let me make you bigger.
That is actually me blowing dust off this. This is not just for the camera. This hasn't seen the light of day for a while. This is a world destroyed. This is what Flicky Spaceships started out as. So this is for a bit of background for that. So the board game redesign competition was a strange beast. It was man, that's a lot of dust. It was conceived by Cara Gander and Alan Paul, who is a friend of this show, and a number of other folk. For this was in 2013, I believe. It's a long time ago.
I believe so as well.
So I think that was the first one, and it was advertised on Board Game Geek, and it was advertised to those folk that have been going to Expo for a while, and which I have.
And the way it worked is that you paid £10, and you would get the components of a game that had been undersold.
That's correct.
Leisure Games. It was kind of sponsored by Leisure Games. I mean, Caraganda worked at Leisure Games at the time. It's like, hey, we've got so lots of stock of games. You know what? I bet people could make a whole new games using these same components.
That's it.
And I need to have Cara and Alan on at some point to talk about the actual genesis. I'm sure that I'm simplifying the conversation for the sake of.
I would morbidly love to know that, actually, for reasons which will probably become clear. So the game in question for 2013 was a game called Wilderness by the Fricks brothers, who later went on to make Terraforming Mars, amongst other things. But it was a game with all the components. It had everything, and the kitchen sink in there. It had a spinner. It had hex boards. It had little wooden pieces.
And you still have those original components in that first box.
Yeah. Let's see what we got. Yeah, some of them anyway. So those, they're paste ups. What else have we got in here? Yeah.
So the idea was that you could use any rules, use as many of the components as you can
as you possibly
for your new game, and make a game.
That's it. I think did they still have the original cards in? They paste up.
How was that experience? If you had to describe it in 30 seconds for the camera, like, did you feel good about it? Did you win? Did you lose horribly?
We won. We won. It was bizarre. Right. So, I mean, again, I would love to hear Cara and Alan talk about this, but Sam Mercer, who's my co-designer and great friend, who stalked me on the internet and decided that we should be game design buddies. Okay. We entered because we wanted to win a competition more than anything else, and we decided that we would, and we went about it in a cold and ruthless fashion. far colder and more ruthless, I think, than the organisers were anticipating. Yeah, so we went around Sam's. I mean, Sam lives down near Southampton, and we essentially sort of went down there, opened the box up, and sort of got all the pieces out. And Sam said, "I want to make a dexterity game." I went, "Yeah, all right." And so we did one of the great things about Board Game Geek is you can do a search on mechanics. And we went, all right, what we got for space, sort of not space games at the time, but what we got for sort of dexterity games that do things like push things around a board. Okay, fine. And so we did, and we came across this game called I think it's called Master Football in German, where you have you flick a D20 around the board. I think you have some sort of frame with a pendulum on it that you push a D20 around a football board, and that would look quite mad. And we started off doing that. We started thinking, well, we've got all these hex boards that we could put together in a funky fashion. And then we started doing that, and then started pushing. Then we started pushing some of the pieces around the board, and thought this is pretty good. This is quite mad. But and then we got Sam's friend Benji to 3D print a load to make a frame around the edge of the board, right? Which we duly did. And then we sort of said, okay, so look, this game is essentially going to be Subbuteo table football meets Settlers of Catan. That was the thing. And we put it together, and it was working quite well. And there's a guy called James Wallace who is a legend in the UK board games industry, and a fantastic
game designer of Once Upon a Time, and recently came out with a book called, I believe, Everybody Wins.
Everybody Wins, that's right.
An exploration of all the Spiel des Jahres winners and analysing them a bit.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, ex-head of Hogshead, Las Vegas, all sorts of stuff. He used to write a blog called Cope, and on that blog, and he also used to be a lecturer at Southampton University, lecturing on game design. On that blog, he put down about he wrote about him being asked to coach a City of London team who were looking to win a finance competition, and he broke down in detail how him and his team won that competition. And they looked at the judges, they looked at the judging criteria, they looked at how it was going to be, what you were going to do on the day, what the presentations were, who the judges were, what their interests were. He reverse engineered the entire competition. I thought, well, I can do that. So I looked up Cara and Alan, found out that I knew Alan weirdly through his work at Standard Games. Looked up Cara, looked up Quinns, who was one of the judges for that year, who didn't end up judging, he stepped back from that competition completely following the announcement. And Sam and I looked at them and looked at what they liked, and then made a game that the judges were really likely to like. We also made a game that would be really easy to demonstrate at UK Games Expo. So part of the criteria for winning that competition was the public vote. So we thought, okay, look, we're just going to have to just demo this to hell. So we need to get people to sit down and fill in forms and go for it. So we're looking at a game that's going to be about 45 minutes maximum, and it's going to leave people. You have to get people to sit down. They have to leave happy. So the pitch was, do you want to play a flicking game across between Subbuteo and Settlers of Catan? And everyone just went, yeah, that sounds nuts. Let's do it. Yeah, for sure. And
it certainly intrigues. Yeah, I mean, it's a good, solid pitch.
Yeah, it is. It's a good tagline, right? And it's so yeah, and that was it. Essentially, that was it. We stuffed the ballot box. We reverse engineered the judging, and we came up with probably one of the least publishable games you could ever hope to win a board game competition with. Yeah, I mean, it is a dexterity game that requires high quality components with a science fiction theme. I mean, you can hear people running, screaming from Kickstarter already, right? But nonetheless, we won, which was an interesting situation. Sorry, that's the long version explanation, Bez.
It's totally fine. Carry on.
Yeah, it was a cold calculated move.
But it ended up with it finally managing to come out as a physical thing, despite it being an unwieldy thing, as you say.
It is unwieldy, and we got lucky in a massive way. There's always a bit of luck involved in this, and without question, we got lucky. I answered a call on the Facebook board games group from a guy called Ricard Fortin, who was at the time working for Warlord Games. This is I'll skip to the chase on this. He was looking for a dice game. We had one. They published it as Warlord. That is a separate story and one which is quite mad as well. Him and a guy called Graham Davey, Graham Davey, who is one of the best board game developers I've ever come across. The man is an absolute miracle worker. Set up their own company, Room 17, and they were looking to kickstart board games. Excuse me, kickstart board games, and they said, "Look, we
Kickstarter definitely allows you to make a style of board game that you might not normally be able to make. I mean, you can definitely go a little bit further in production values. You might be able to, have a slightly lower return on interest per unit sold. You might be able to have something that's a bit more expensive than you would normally be willing to take a risk on."
That's true. Which is good, which is excellent for this as well.
Exactly.
But they were
allows this to be made.
No, for sure. For sure. And they were looking for games, and we said yes. We have this one. It's it's a competition winning game. It's great. As in trying to two broke guys trying to convince a publisher to publish their game, and they said yeah, sure. And they put the Kickstarter up for Flicky Spaceships, and it failed, which is not really a surprise in retrospect. But it didn't fund, but they did get about 20-ish copies, pre-production copies, and about 500 copies of it printed, which if you have one of these suckers, there are about 520 of them in the world, which is great. And it should, again, by rights, it should never have seen the light of day, really, but it does. And there are some out there. And Room 17, Graham and Rickard did, and Anders did a cracking job in getting it out. I mean, there's a few production problems, and there's a couple of bits and pieces that didn't go quite to plan. But it was the first Kickstarter from a company that was taking a chance on two relatively unpublished board gamers, and I doff my hat to them. I'll credit where it's due.
And it's not sent the world on fire. It's not as if it's shot up to the top 5,000 on Board Game Geek, but you've managed to get more than 30 ratings. You've managed to get a few people who give this, like 3 people are giving it 10 out of 10.
One of them, Sam Mercer, though. You've got to be careful. He is the designer and a shameless man. He really is.
And another 5 people have given it 8 or 9 out of 10. And I'm sure there's going to be a bit of, I see one of them's Rob, who's, from the Playtest UK, who isn't so totally unbiased, but oh yeah, there we go. Cogent test. This is my game, so my rating is super biased. There we go. But there are a few people who really have fallen in love with this. And here, I don't know if you know who Grofane is, who says, I waited a long time to get this game, and it doesn't disappoint. It's great quality, simple and fun, can be played in a reasonable time, and is entertaining for the whole family. Plus, you get a little exercise as you wander around the table before flicking your ship. And definitely one I recommend, but maybe hard to find a copy. I mean, if someone does really want to find a copy, it sounds like they've basically got to scour eBay, hoping that something turns up.
There is a bit of that. At the weekend, this last weekend, I went to there's a local board games meet in a scout hut called Dungeon Crawley, which is the best name. But I came across a guy named Chris. Him and his son Harry, named Flicky Spaceships because they kept referring to it when I was playtesting this down at the local shop in Horsham, which is subsequently closed down, unfortunately. When I was playtesting it at that shop, they said, "Oh, have you bought your Flicky Spaceships game?" I'm like, "Yeah, we can have another go at that." And we kept playtesting it for them. But yeah, Chris and Harry actually sort of coined the name Flicky Spaceships, and we just went with it in the end, because that's what everyone at the playtest group and at Playtest in London was referring to it as, and so it's sort of stuck. And it's a silly name, but it's great because it's exactly what it does. You do flick spaceships around.
Congratulations on that. And I'm looking forward to, let's go properly into that tomorrow. This was just meant to be like a quick introduction, but it's okay. I don't have anywhere to rush off to, and neither do you. So let's get to the intro and talk about Recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights. Recent highlights, playing games and other delights. Recent highlights. What have been some of your recent highlights? Let me know. I mean, if you're in the comments, let us know what you've been up to. Have you managed to get up to anything that's been fun? Or are you with someone? Let us know what you're up to. Yesterday, I am still incredibly unwell, not been out. I had the benefit of my um, neighbor going and doing some shopping for me. So I socially distanced, put some money through, asked them to get a few things. And now I've got at least some fresh bananas. I've got like 3 mince pies left out of the mince pies that were there, and out of the six they got me, and got some peppers. So you can mix peppers with some tinned stuff and make something that feels fresh and good. Yesterday for me, I did play. I'm going to say it's hard to count 4 or 5 levels for Questable, which is the LDEC Design Contest winner of 2022 by Kirsten Lunde, and I'm working on the levels, whilst the game itself is done, it's something kind of like The Crew, where it's a cooperative mission-based word game. And so you're working through these series of levels, and one of the new level types that we've been working on is previously you had some cards set to the side that you could use whenever you wanted, and that was bringing too much consistency. It was making it boring. So once you'd worked out, that's a good word, you had access to all the cards for that particular level. And whilst that's fine with 50 levels, I mean, people can work through, someone made the point that maybe they don't want to keep working through. Sometimes someone might want to say, I really enjoyed that, I want to replay it. So we wanted to make sure that every level felt like something you would want to play with a new group. And you don't just think, we've got to use the W, X, Y, Z. We definitely need to use the word waxy. And so, like a little thing like that, where as soon as you've got the A in your hand, then you start putting that down. And you could even take it further and think, okay, with the most common letters that are likely to come into our hands and the things that, you know what I mean? So now we've got them coming up in a random order, which sounds, I was worried that it would feel too chaotic, and I'm not a big fan of lack of agency, but it's like, I managed to do this and I've got 2 words. So I enjoyed it so much, I ended up playing it 5 times. Also, I've watched almost an entire series of Alice in Borderland. Have you heard of this? It's a Japanese series which is very high violence. It's not suitable, and for children, definitely. It's kind of about. So in the first episode, everyone disappears from an area in Tokyo. They're like, "Whoa, what's happened?" Everyone suddenly disappeared, and then these 3 friends go through life. Well, the whole thing got up until now. It might be like 1 month. I don't know, but they're going through. They have to do these twisted games. Like these games, obviously. I said it's ultra violence. It involves death, and it involves them having to make really difficult decisions, and it is high emotion, and it's I find that the characterization might be a little bit lacking. I find that the main character is almost like a blank slate. It's a sort of stereotypical nerd. I think it sort of betrays the manga roots, where they're quite often a blank slate that the readership is meant to paste themselves onto, if you know what I mean. But it's really captivating. I've not seen Squid Games yet, but I'm sure it's very similar, where it's like, what comes next? But this was the first season of this came out before Squid Games, so I'm enjoying that. And Sate in the comments says, not getting up to anything, not seeing people, still COVID-y. Are you also COVID-y? I am feeling really rubbish physically, and also whenever I move more than a few meters, I feel like I'm going to collapse. That's basically it.
does sound a bit cozy.
And it says, you got me all excited when I said like the crew, but then you throw in those busy but with words. It's, yeah. But anyway, Matt, what have you been up to? What are some of your recent highlights?
Recent highlights. Gaming highlights. Ooh, I don't know. Or other highlights, I suppose. I've really enjoyed First Rat this year. That's that one I've had a lot of good fun with, which has been just interesting to explore. It's not the world's deepest, most sort of high strategy game, but it is jolly good fun building a silly
Sorry,
spaceship with rats.
Deep Rat.
First Rat, as in
First
first
Rat.
rat on the moon. So yeah.
Okay, I don't know that one.
Oh, first it's it's rather good, that one. That one's been good. What else have I been up to this? I mean, it's been. I'm lucky enough to have my daughter living with me at the moment, who's living the dream and working for a software house in Guildford. So that's been she's been down here for about 7 months now. So that's been really good fun having her around. But she's taken over my study, which is fine because she works from home 3 days a week. But I'm now surrounded by Bez-like post-it notes with pictures of cats on. There are cats everywhere. But yes, which is all very good. Yes, sorry, yes. First Rat, that's the one. Yes. So yes, I'm now surrounded with post-it notes with cats, but it's handy to have someone to play games with, which is all good fun as well. Other than that, what else? Other than that, working with a man named Tony Boydell on a very, very silly game about small town English politics in the mid 20th century, called Jerusalem, which is suitably insane, but really interesting because I've not actually worked with Tony on the design before, and the man is a machine. And some of my homework for the Christmas holidays is to go through all the card list and do a bit of editing and sorting stuff out. Which is something to do, which will be good fun. I'm actually
and if you want to hear a little bit about that, then click the link that I've put out through all the things. Unless you're watching on Twitter, in which case, come over, watch it on YouTube or something, I guess. But yeah.
Oh, no. Well, bless you. Thank you for that. That's hopefully that'll be good. Other bits and pieces as well. Other bits and other bits and pieces. My job keeps me busy, which I love. But yeah.
So what is your job? What have you been up to? Were you working yesterday?
Yes. Unfortunately, I mean, this is why I sort of call myself an amateur designer, right? I've got my job is working in an insect lab for a pest control company, which is fascinating and incredibly interesting, but keeps me amused and they keep finding interesting things for me to do, and I keep working for them, and it's been sort of 15 years now. And it's jolly good fun. I thoroughly enjoy sort of being a scientist and actually getting my hands dirty and doing some stuff that might make a bit of a difference to sort of public hygiene and health in the world.
Let's talk about insects, and let's talk about why insects could be a brilliant thing. Our little thing which is brilliant. Why
could be? Well, they
insects...
absolutely are. There's no could be about it. Insects are fantastic. They're I've spent quite a long time looking at them. No, they're very good. Brilliant thing. Yeah, they are. They are great. They are. They're fantastic in a sort of weird alien way. So I look at the ones that are particularly suited for sort of living around humans more than anything else, that sort of eat.
And why are insects brilliant? Is it just their weird shapes, our fascination with this exoskeleton completely alien to what we understand?
I mean, yes, all of that. Yeah, they're mad.
But what else?
Well, what else? Okay, so they've got the big social insects, like one big sort of superorganism. So the ants, the termites, the bees and wasps, the big social ones are fascinating in that they're all effectively clones of each other and all work for the common good, which is an interesting thing for a start. That's fantastic. I particularly like ones that sort of bore into timber and try and try and eke out a living by eating some very, very difficult substances and getting almost no nutrition out of it. That's fantastic. Their ability to survive at anything is great. They are incredibly persistent, and termites have been around for 30+ million years. They must be doing something right. I think we can learn a lot from these things, and it's great. And just looking at where they live and what the habitats they are, there's you can and people have dedicated their entire lives to just looking at insects. And I count myself as incredibly fortunate that I can make a living doing it.
That is awesome. And so at this point, I like to ask some questionably quick questions. Is the next section? It's not an interrogation. It's just a questionably quick questions section. Questionably quick questions.
The fact you have to caveat that it's not an interrogation now immediately makes me think this is going to be an interrogation. But all right, okay, I'm down with it.
Books or podcasts?
Sorry, what are podcasts?
Books or podcasts?
Oh, books. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's not okay. Fine.
Which one was the last one you finished?
The last one I finished. Was The Prague Cemetery by Umberto Eco, which sounds incredibly worthy. But the one before that was the one before that was I think was the final Terry Pratchett Watchmen book. So yeah.
Who would you recommend The Prague Cemetery to?
Oh, who would I recommend The Prague Cemetery to? Oh, one of my if you like hideously complicated plots where the author gives you nothing, then a plot that where the guy has to put at the back of it. He gives notes at the back explaining bits of the plot on a chapter by chapter basis. I mean, he knows he's not writing for he knows this isn't the Da Vinci Code, right? He's not writing for the airport casual buyer. But it is quite nice in the same way that it's nice to play like some really crunchy train games that hate you. It's really nice to read books that just sort of aren't going to give it to you on a plate, that actually make you think and make you work for it, which is quite good. I have to say that is you caught me at a particularly worthy point in my reading. I tend to do about one of those books a year. But yeah, it does. He is good. He did The Name of the Rose and Foucault's Pendulum, both of which are excellent books. Generally, Name of the Rose is made into a film, but yeah.
Now, as Xate says, hashtag totally an interrogation. Where were you at 5 p.m. on the 23rd of December, 2022?
At 5 p.m. yesterday. 5 p.m. yesterday, I was cooking dinner, or was I playing Hearthstone? Probably playing Hearthstone. That tends to be an addiction. I was probably doing both, actually, which is a horrifying thing to admit. But yeah,
you have talked about how you love CCGs. Why have you not tried making your own CCG?
Oh, because I'm sane. Have you looked at trying to make a CCG? Oh my word! I think those things should only be approached after you have like 100 published games or something, because they are nuts. They're the sort of things that sort of game designers, when they sort of go, yeah, I can design a game. Let's do that. They go, oh, a CCG should be fairly straightforward, and you have to be certifiably insane to think you can design a CCG, right? Richard Garfield is an absolute card-carrying genius to have done as many as he has, but no, it's nuts, because if you're looking at sort of interactions, I mean, that's what kills game design, right? That's what breaks games. And if you've got sort of a board with some pieces that interact on a board, it's like that's a great place to start. Anyone who's looking to be a game designer or whatever else, take one piece of advice, start with something on a board. But people think that, yeah, okay, it's easy to produce because it's just a load of cards and you just need some stuff like that. And they design the card back artwork first, right? And then they come out with they sort of think, yeah, I think it's going to be about 300 to 400 cards. It balloons to about 500 cards. They do one play test and it breaks to all hell. And yeah, it's insanity. And I think this is a lot of the reason why most there are many reasons why most CCGs are only 2-player, because you only have one source of sort of variability, one opponent. It makes it easier to playtest as well, because you can ratchet through the playtest quite quicker. But no, I think you would have to be nuts to do a CCG. Just generally, I think they're incredibly difficult to pull off and do well.
I mean, I'm not going to explore that answer more, but that's a very interesting one. What I want to know is what are the top three CCGs you would recommend, firstly as a player, and secondly as a designer?
Oh, there's going to be different answers. It's
Yes,
going to be very, very
absolutely.
different answers.
That's
As
why
a
I'm asking you
player,
for two lists.
no, it's going to be cool. As a player, okay, as a player, what have we got? As a player, Hearthstone. I know it's a digital CCG; it still counts because it's incredibly accessible and it's you can learn a lot about. You can just have fun with it. There are various different modes. You can have a great laugh with it. That's all very good. Do friends recommend Friends Magic the Gathering? I'm not sure they do, but yeah, I think you probably should as a player. You probably should play that one as a player. And Vampire: The Eternal Struggle, you should play as a player, right? If you're into playing games, that's fine. Now I'll put that one at
And
third.
yeah, Magic the Gathering, I mean, recently, I'm sure that you are. Do you keep up with it? Are you familiar with what they did for Magic the Gathering 30?
I've been clean for nearly a decade now from
So you
Magic.
haven't even looked at what they've done. So in the last 2 years, the number of new cards that they've made per year has skyrocketed. Like people looked at the graph like and last 2 years it has literally gone up like that.
Oh wow!
And for Magic the Gathering 30 celebration, the 30th anniversary, they made a 60 cards in 4 boosters. So you buy a box with 4 boosters in it, reprints of the original beta, but with a totally different back, so it's not tournaments legal.
Okay,
And guess how much that is?
are these random, as in random
They're
card boosters?
randomized cards, but you get between 4 and 8 rare cards. So in theory, you might get 8 Black Lotuses. You won't, but you could.
Sure.
Um,
If they're putting stuff like that in, then they're going to charge. So the Masters set
and the back of the card,
is
it's a proxy.
different.
So it's a proxy. It's totally different back.
That's not going to stop people these days, though, because the international sets that
Make a
were never
guess.
legal, that I don't know, they were charging about 150-ish quid for the master sets where they first came out. So it's probably about double that. What, 300, 400 pounds,
More,
500 pounds,
more.
600, 700 pounds?
It was $1,000, and
Why?
so there was a backlash saying, and yeah, it's kind of ridiculous at this point. And hello, Mike
Oh,
Nudd,
Mike, oh,
who
Mike.
gives a shout out to A4V Test. Anyway, so for a game that you don't need to presumably spend,
You really
thousands
don't.
of pounds staying up to date with, Vampire's Eternal Struggle. What makes you? I mean, Magic the Gathering. Honestly, I do think that going to pre-releases, it is amazing the amount of new mechanics that they come out. And
Yeah.
Hearthstone, I've played myself a wee bit. I played the World of Warcraft CCG that came out before it,
All
that
that.
it's very much based on, and leaning into the randomness that you can have with digital cards is a really interesting design choice. And
Absolutely.
VTES, I mean, originally designed by Garfield, I believe, to be the social CCG, the one that was made with multiplayer from the ground up. Why
Yeah.
do you believe that this is a quality game?
Um, because why do I believe it's a quality game? Because because it should never have been published, right? You've got if you're a player, right? If you're a player, you've got. I mean, I'm an absolute mechanism junkie. I mean, this stuff behind me there. I mean, I love like weird stuff, like crazy weird board games with different mechanisms and all sorts of bits and pieces in it, right? If it's got something, I mean, you've got Hey Yo over there, which is the board game, which is the cooperative rhythm game we play with a little with the beat going, which is great. You got Pack and Stack behind me as well, which is a sort of a dexterity game about packing removal vans. I've got Tokyo Highway and all sorts of stuff like that. I love crazy mechanisms. So yeah, VTES, Vampire: The Eternal Struggle, shouldn't exist. It got made in 1994 after Magic. So Wizards of the Coast are swimming in money at this point, right? They've got too much money. They can burn it for fuel. they can fund anything. And so they decide to fund a multiplayer CCG based on the World of Darkness, because Wizards of the Coast and White Wolf at the time were sort of small American publishers, and they had a good relationship. They knew each other pretty well. And I said, yeah, look, and White Wolf was like, yeah, you can use our IP, make a card game out of it. All right, sure. So they released it to market to keep on the zeitgeist of CCGs coming out. And it, under any other circumstances, would never have seen the light of day. Because the original version of it was badly named as Jihad, which is just appalling. So there was no one in marketing doing anything here, and it didn't work. I mean, it was broken to all hell. It then took a concerted effort by the players on the Usenet groups, for anyone who remembers Usenet, to actually smash the rules together, make some useful house rules. And make the game work. And they did a really good job. And the community kept on doing a really good job of keeping this game going when the company that was publishing it really didn't have a clue how to publish balanced and decent cards, or how to play the game well. Wizards gave up after about 3 expansions, most of which were just it contained cards which were hideous. They then passed it over to White Wolf, who did a bang up job. The first thing they did was hire the net rep, who was collecting the rules. The first thing they did was hire him as a designer, and he proceeded to do an epic job for about a decade on just putting out cards, keeping the game going. And White Wolf did a cracking job, and mostly based around the player base, just sort of keeping people playing, getting very, very involved in keeping it going. White Wolf no longer publish it. It's published by some fantastic folk at Black Chantry, who have done an even better job at not only, because it's now actually owned and published by the players themselves. So they do an incredible job at keeping everything together and putting out decent card sets, keeping everyone involved.
And I'm sure that Mike could, tell us more about the history. But what I really want is for you to give us your top, give us really quickly 3 reasons why I should play Vites, or why anyone watching should play Vampire: The Eternal Struggle.
1, it's a multiplayer CCG. Those things are really rare. 2, it will alter your perception. If you have played CCGs, it will alter your perception about what they are and what they should be, because it does things very, very, very differently, and actually just multiplayers, no card limits, no set rotation, all the things you take for red in CCGs aren't there. And 3, you meet some incredible people playing it. It's a really social game, and you meet some people who are, because you've got to find out about it, you've got to know that it exists, and then you've got to find who's playing it, and you've got to get somebody to teach you and that sort of stuff. And if you jump through all those hoops, the rewards are great, because you're with loads of other like-minded people, which is fantastic. So there you go. Yeah, the people, the mechanisms, and the fact that it's just a jolly interesting game.
I mean, the fact that there's no set rotation is fascinating, and I would love to have a chat about that. Maybe get Mike Nod on if Mike fancies it. But let's talk about the other list that I asked you. What are the top 3 games that you would recommend a designer play as far as
designer play?
Yes,
that's different. That's a different thing. That is a different thing indeed. You should as a designer, you should certainly play Magic. Let's get this over and done with. It's brilliant. Mark Rosewater does a great job of putting out what you can do with a set of cards. You should also look at it as a way to not do resources in games, and the whole thing about Mana Screw and Mana Flood, which is not a great player experience.
Interesting, because whilst I do agree that it can lead to moments of frustration, I think I prefer that system than the Hearthstone WoW system, where that system, it's basically a case of I can only do this and I have to do it. It feels more constrained. In Magic the Gathering, if I want to make an entirely green deck with 1 blue card in it, because I feel like that one, I might have 4 copies of that 1 blue card, but that it feels very different. And crafting that mana base is part of that deck construction.
That's true. And then not seeing it is also part of the experience, I suppose. But yeah, I get it. I suppose it does lead to slightly more creativity in that respect. I think we haven't seen the last of it. I think you're right, incidentally, about the sort of Hearthstone versus system. If anyone out there remembers that, where you have a sort of a logical sort of linear progression of resources per turn, does lead to some quite sort of staid routes of play down there.
I was meaning more in terms of deck construction, where in the Hearthstone, where it's like you have access to these cards and these cards because this is your hero. And
I see. I get you. Okay. No, I see that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. That is a bonus for Magic. That's true. You can play everything. Everything from
if you choose all 5 colors, then obviously that's a terrible move. It feels more nuanced somehow. I mean, if I choose a deck that is just 1 blue card, but this blue card only has to come up really late in the game, that's going to be more reliable than in the example if my deck was 50-50 green and blue. And if I needed access to both of those resources at the start, obviously it would be less viable. And sure, there will be times when all my blue resources are at the bottom of the deck. It just happens to be that way. And I go through 3/4 of my deck and I don't draw a single blue resource, but that hopefully I've got other cards that allow me to fix things. And that's again part of the thing. The consistency versus the what you're aiming for. And obviously, but then the other problem is that yes, net decking becomes a thing unless you're playing limited. And I think that's any game where limited is the key way to play. And every time you're playing limited, it's 25 quid a pop. That's
brutal, isn't
expensive.
It? Yeah, it's a lifestyle choice at that point, isn't it? It really is.
But yeah, carry on. Sorry, I didn't mean to make this all
No, it's fine. No, hey, look, we can talk about Magic for a long time.
We sure could.
Yeah, I met my wife playing Magic. I feel like I won the ultimate prize. It's like fine. So we got what have we got? What have we got? Netrunner. If you're a player, you should play Netrunner. Definitely. It's whether you play the CCG or LCG, it doesn't really matter. Netrunner is fantastic, especially if you sort of like follow. If you track the trajectory of what Richard Garfield was doing. Netrunner is a very, very fine game indeed.
Making it highly asymmetric and now, run by the fans again. Yeah, kind of similar to Vitesse. It's really nicely curated.
It is. It's fantastic as well. And credit to FFG when they relaunched that. That original box set and the first cycle of the LCG is absolutely incredible. I mean, the amount of play you can get out of that is insane. It's really good. The final one you should play as a player. It doesn't matter which one you choose. You should play. You should find and play the cheapest CCG. It doesn't matter what it is. Find a really cheap one that you can buy multiple booster boxes of for almost no money. So anything you can get a booster box of for 10 quid. Go crazy. Drop some money. Buy 5 or 6 booster boxes of this stuff and 5 starter boxes. It doesn't matter what it is. Hercules, C23, crikey, Avatar, the trading card game, Harry Potter, X-Files. I mean, there's a whole gamut of them out there for you. If you
Huntic is actually really good. I'm not even saying that ironically. Like Huntic is actually has some really nice aspects. I mean, the fact that the positioning becomes a viable thing, which is really uncommon.
Yeah, it is uncommon. I mean, this is this thing, right? Yeah, I mean, go into the dark, go into the corners of CCGs. Go find the weird stuff. Have 5 booster boxes of some hugely unfortunate overprinted game from like the late 90s. Turn up at your doorstep and then open 100 booster packs and see what you can find. Because that I can tell you is one of the best things you can ever do with a CCG. My daughter and I had incredible amounts of fun with Avatar, the trading card game.
And dedicate an afternoon with someone else to take you on that journey.
Absolutely. It is a hugely lovable, enjoyable experience. It doesn't matter which game you pick. Pick one that's that's furiously cheap, and just go for it.
What do you think about getting rid of some of the deck construction rules? Because, I mean, most deck construction rules are made with the idea that, well, we want people to have access to all the cards. We saw what happens with Magic the Gathering. That's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for people to imagine the ideal deck and then go off seeking for those cards. And that's one way to do it. But then when you've only got, this is what you've got. And so for Huntic, for as an example, the official deck construction rules are that you can either have the good guys or the bad guys. It was literally that. It was actually similar to Star Wars, frankly. I think it's just uninspired and it makes kind of sense in the narrative, but it just feels, why can't I have these things comboing together? That makes the game more exciting. So what I did is I said, well, let's both have a starter box each, and we both got access to pretty much the same cards.
Yeah.
So let's both just make whatever we can with our decks. There's no rules, just do literally anything. And then that's allowed us to explore it and explore the what ifs, which is that how you would recommend it?
That's fantastic. Yeah. Putting up essentially putting a you sort of fence off the deck construction rules, right? You say, okay, everything that's in this card pool is fine, which is all good. There was you can also do things like points buy system. So if certain
like
cards
a typical minis game, like Warhammer.
Yeah. But if you say that, for example, I know, like your rare cards are worth 5 or 10. If your rare cards are worth 10 points, your uncommon words are worth 5, and your commons are worth 1. You can have 80 points worth of deck playing 80 points worth of deck, or something like that, right? There is another obscure game called Drop Mix, which was out a few years back, which is a rhythm game with cards with NFID tags in.
And the sad thing about Drop Mix is that they got rid of the app, apparently. So now you have to go and take extra steps to get the app.
It's true. I know. It is one of my absolute favorite games, full stop. I love it.
Wow.
Another game that shouldn't exist. But yeah, it's I went very, very long into Drop Mix. I have a lot of Drop Mix cards, an awful lot of Drop Mix cards. But my daughter and I played Drop Mix more than probably most humans should. But when you do constructed decks with Drop Mix, it does have that points buy system in it, and we were playing with a limited pool of cards because you can't get the things really easily, and you're limited to like 2 copies per deck anyway. But we got very deep into Drop Mix, like doing stuff like that and working out what you can do with points buy systems on CCG construction, and that is something I'd really like to see more of. I think it probably just means that you spend more time constructing a deck than playing the game. So there's probably
I'm not
probably a break
fan of points buy systems, just because I think that sure, if you work out what points everything is worth, it can make a really fair army or whatever. And it makes a lot of sense with a miniatures thing where everything is on the battlefield at once. I mean, if I've got hundreds of these little goblins, they can all swarm you, and sure, because of fear and terror, like this big creature might actually just send all of them running, and it's not even a fight. But, in theory,
I get it.
It makes sense. But then with a CCG, I don't know. I've got a dream, and so I'm going to bring it in here because you've talked today about anyone who wants to make a CCG is a bit nuts, and I've got a dream of making a CCG where the typical deck size is about 20, and so you buy 54 cards, and that's enough for you to actually have access to lots of different things for, and in my mind, I'm thinking maybe if they were domino style cards, if you know what I mean, and so you tuck them under things when they're permanents, and then you kind of put them together like Carcassonne style, but you're tucking half, so you get to choose which half you use. But some of them use both halves potentially. But then, there's a lot in the overarching rules I've still got to work out. But my dream is to have a CCG where you have, hey, everyone gets exactly the same bunch of cards, and it's a big secret. You don't know which cards are going to come out, and then it's a release, and hey, we get to play with these. And now I spend like £10 and I get a viable limited experience. I come, I spend £10. That it feels accessible, and I want all the cards to be not worth that much for the way they play. I want it to be about 50 quid or less per year to just have all the cards, but then the collectability comes from alternative art, where it's like, hey, this is a basic art. This looks cool. It looks fine. It's a nice game. But if you want this extra super special art, then those cards might cost you, sure. Well, whatever it costs, even if that card costs you £1,000, it doesn't matter because you can still play with the basic version. And I think that's really interesting because there's no one who's really dared to sever the collectability aspect and the playability aspect.
That's true. I like that. I see what you're going with that. That's interesting. We're talking about tucking cards under for different things. That's interesting. I like that plan. That's cool. It reminds me of I mean, one of my favorites is Lavrania, which does that there. Which is a cracking game, which does that where your cards have got multiple uses for where you tuck them around the board. Sam and I came up with a game, mostly Sam, but Sam and I came up with a game called Stone Run Keep, where you have to kill a two-headed dragon. It was an 18-card, one of these 18-card games, but it was like Speed Talisman, where we went around the board, but you had to be the second person to kill the dragon. Glory to Rome, Mike. Yeah, absolutely. You had to be the second person to kill the dragon, and we had that where you could get a magic sword. And the magic sword, if you had a certain amount of health on your character's track, you put the magic sword underneath this way, and the magic sword did one thing. But then if you lost health or gained health, and the track went to the other side, the sword came in and tucked at the top, and the magic sword did a different amount of things depending on how much health you had left. It depended on how good your magic item was or what your magic item did. But no, I think there is something you can do with that. That would be fun. And then you'd be asking yourself questions about, I've only got 20 cards. Do I really want to tuck one of these cards under here to make this a 2-card unit with 1/20th of my resources? That's fun.
I mean, I'm thinking
I'll play that in an instant, Bez. Yeah. Sign me up for the playtest.
Awesome. But final question will be quick questions.
Go on then.
Would you rather be a shark or a pigeon for a day?
A shark or a pigeon for a day? That's interesting.
Awesome.
It's going to be a shark, definitely.
Well.
It's going to be a shark without question. Mostly because I just get to look at the underwater seascapes and enjoy myself like that. One of my favorite computer games at the minute is Subnautica. I don't play a lot of computer games, but Subnautica has taken me far longer than I think anyone ever should play it, because I just get distracted and start looking at fish.
Well, today the questionably quick questions have emphasis on the questionably, and it's not being quick at all. It says pigeon is not equal to shark. Shark or eagle, pigeon or goldfish. I mean, okay, sure, shark or eagle. Will be
no, I don't know. I think pigeon's fine. Like pigeon has the advantage of you being able to see human structures from a different angle,
can kind of go.
Being part of a flock, that's fantastic. You feel like you're part of something. It's a very different experience.
If it's only for a day, an eagle can definitely go higher, though.
Yeah, it can. But
I agree with Xate.
Yeah,
I slightly lopsided it, but I mean, I'm. Yeah.
You could have said any fish and pigeon, and I would have still said whatever the fish was. So that doesn't matter. Sorry?
Even if it was a goldfish in a tank.
Oh, not all goldfish are in tanks. I mean, goldfish are.
Yeah. If it was in a river or a small stream rather than a deep water fish?
Yeah, I don't know. I think fish generally, is quite.
Anyway,
sorry. Carry on. Yes.
So, today was meant to just be a bit about you, and I think we've done a bit of that. I'd like to ask you, what's your first memory that you're willing to share?
Walking into the hospital holding my uncle's hand whilst going to see my mum after my sister was born is my first memory, because it's a really vivid memory.
Wow. And what do you typically do on a day-to-day basis at your job? I mean, you talked about pest control and etymology, so this love of insects and genocide is presumably a bit contradictory?
No, not at all. There's different sorts of entomologists, right? Some people always think it's like dudes with elbow pads pinning butterflies into cases. I'm just really interested in how they behave. So I spend a lot of time watching cockroaches and flies. I know it's a strange job, but somebody has to do it. So I spend a lot of time videoing insects and watching how they behave around different things. Yeah, so it's about, I don't know, I spend about I spend about a third of my time in the lab, and the rest of the time I spend just organizing experiments and looking at Excel spreadsheets. Another reason why I do this game design lark as a part-time thing, because if your entire day is looking at spreadsheets, the last thing you kind of want to do when you get home is look at more spreadsheets.
So should I assume that your game design process is very hands-on, like you don't enjoy typing stuff or printing stuff, you just put your Sharpies onto the cards straight away?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's pens, blank cards. Just keep iterate. Just keep doing it. Yeah. I think one of the worst things you can do is make a really shiny prototype, because then you're less likely to change it, because you think, no, I spent lots of effort making that prototype. It's like, well, yeah, sure, but it's still wrong, right? So you're still going to have to go and do it again. So yeah, no, absolutely. Things with counters with the word shark written on them. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that sort of thing. Rather than spending ages in Photoshop. Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of your passions that make up Matt when not studying insects or making games?
Okay. I do like motorcycles. I haven't ridden one for about 10 years, but I do like motorcycles. I must get one this year. So that's my one thing for 2023 is to get back and ride again, which is cool. What else do I like? I like pistachio nuts a lot. I like drinking tea an awful lot. Up until this year I fenced. I was a club fencer quite well, but I've given that a break, because I felt it was becoming a bit of an obligation. Although now I've put on weight, obviously, because I'm not doing a lot. So I need to find something else active to do. But yeah, that sort of thing. What else? Yeah. And I enjoy sort of decorating my house and doing bits to my house, because it's a project. I love projects, generally speaking. Just love projects.
And
You put the My Life with Woodworm
hello,
list up there.
Jason
Okay.
Frisbee, who says, that shock when you load up Facebook and see a face you gamer recognise on Bez's Daily Show. So we are just finishing up, and I think before we do, the last thing I would like to ask you is, if someone is entering a contest, what would you recommend to them? Do you think that, by going for what would these judges like? Presumably you ended up with a game that you wouldn't have ended up with. Presumably nothing would have existed in Flicky Spaceships were it not for this redesign contest.
That's correct.
And would you recommend this sort of super tailored approach for other people entering contests? What tips would you give them?
I'll answer that obliquely. I think the first question you ask is, do you really want to win the prize? Like that's what you've got to do. Do you really want to win the prize, or do you just want to yeah. I mean, no, that's not good advice at all, because we didn't want to win the prize. We just wanted the structure by which to design a game around, right? Because that's what the competition does, right? It provides you the structure. It gives you a deadline. It gives you rules to design by, and somebody will give you feedback. I mean, I mean, if you can get that in board game design, that's fantastic. Someone's saying, I'm definitely going to give you feedback on something you do. Like, yeah. I mean, you should do all competitions just for that, because getting honest feedback is virtually impossible. So you should do.
And it does depend a lot on the contest. I mean,
yeah,
I try to work very hard to make sure that everyone who enters the LDEC design contest gets a lot of feedback, and I try to send audio feedback from a couple of playtests to everyone.
Definitely.
But And I know that there's been people who've done a great job of board game design workshop. Chris Anderson, I believe, has this
Yes.
amazing contest where you can basically enter anything, and it's honestly, it's just a way to get a lot of feedback from a lot of people, and it's brilliant for that. And similarly, the redesign contest was small enough. I mean, how many were sold? Like, you have to pay 10 quid to enter.
Yeah.
Then you have to make the game. Then you have to physically give it to Leisure Games in London or post it over to them. And so it's not as if they'll be looking through hundreds of things. I mean, even if a game takes a couple of hours, they will have time to read through it and play it.
For sure. You'd have to ask Alan and Cara what the dropout rate was, and in terms of numbers of boxes of Wasteland given away to numbers of game redesign received back from it. I have a suspicion that dropout rate is huge. Like, I think a lot of people just go, yeah, I could do a competition, and then the savage reality of it hits. So I have a suspicion that dropout rate was probably greater than 50%. So I think they took a lot more £10 notes than they received games.
There are some contests from some companies where you submit something and then they've got hundreds of entries and they just don't have time to give any receipts of entry, let alone any feedback. And frankly, when you send something and you feel like, yeah, I know this isn't the best game I've ever done. I know it might not be the thing to set the world on fire, but I thought it was like a nice game. I thought it had like some interesting bits. I thought it worked well, and it was cute. Even like a one-liner to say, "Oh, we thought," like it feels like they looked through the rules and nothing interesting. Let's move on. So at that point, you're looking for reasons to not select a game rather than things to say about it.
No,
I understand it. It's kind of a victim of its own success in some ways.
That said, from a participant's point of view, it's practice, and there's nothing ever wrong with practice. So
that's true. That's true. And, you know, as much as I might be slightly resentful, I'm not going to name names. It's like, yeah, I made an abstract strategy game. It hopefully won't be the best abstract strategy game I ever make. And, you know, there'll be another one. And
there
it's
will
practice.
But if you learn something, if you find something, one mechanism, one thing that works in that design, then it's not been wasted. If you then come back to that and do something else with it again, then it's not wasted at all. You've learned
100%. And I think that's a really nice place to finish up on. That it's about what you've said, finding the restrictions and leaning into them so that you can make something totally new and lean into that sense of framework. Hopefully you go for the ones where you're getting more feedback than the ones where you're getting a bit less feedback. And also the ones where you're getting more feedback are probably run by people who are eager to have more participants. But lean into it and don't stress too much about it, I would say. It is meant to be a friendly thing. And it's very, very rare that a game done for a contest is going to set the world on fire. But what it can be is part of a bigger board game career, I guess.
Absolutely.
So at this point, I like to start wrapping up, and I'd like to ask you, Matt, to ask me a question. So I've asked you lots of things, but what would you like to ask me and everyone else here? Matt's now asking the question of the day. Question of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way. Question of the day.
Question of the day is fruit or nut?
Oh, fruits or nuts?
Yeah, it's a time where British households have bowls of nuts placed around, optimistically hoping that people will eat them. And also,
I would absolutely eat nuts and fruits. I would eat both. But I think that, okay, here's where I'm at. I'm thinking nuts have the benefit that they are preserved. I mean, unless you're talking about dried fruits. I'm assuming you're talking about fresh fruits.
I'm talking about fresh fruit. I think we should talk about fresh fruit.
Okay, so we're talking about fresh fruits versus nuts, and the nuts can last for months and months and months. and I could buy, so many bags and get them in, and then like if I'm sick, have some nuts. I sadly don't have any nuts. It's a bit sad. I've got other things. In tins, but so that's good. And like nuts have a reasonably healthy source of calories. It's good times. But then fresh fruit, it has that zest. It's got that vitamin C. It feels more invigorating.
Oh.
And so for me, if I could only choose one to have in the house, it would be fresh fruit.
See, that went a lot deeper than I thought. That was excellent. No, I agree.
Mm-mm.
I think I agree as well. Although I do love pistachio nuts.
Yeah.
I think it's a tough call actually. If pistachios are involved.
See, it says, "Eat which you are what you eat," and I have nuts. And in case you can't tell, I am a nut.
Well,
Says, well, and at like UK Games Expo, I always make sure to have a lot of snacks and stuff for people, and like not for everyone coming by. I mean, you can't just come by someone that doesn't know me just because you watched a show once and say, "Hey, Bez, can I have some of your snacks?" I mean, that's a bit of a big ask. But if you want to work for me, if you want to help me out, like just help out like a couple of hours, absolutely. You can have some snacks, and I'll take care of you.
Sure.
But
no, I tend to take some fresh fruit to Expo. It's a bit of a fruit-free zone. Some of the catering options up there, so I think taking a bag of apples is never a bad idea. Actually,
exactly, and I think that whilst nuts are a really strong choice, you can get them like before you set off. Once I'm in Birmingham this year, what we did is, I think on the Friday morning, we went off to the Sainsbury's. We got like this much like fruits. Like I can't quite get it in frame. Let me change the camera so I can get it in frame. We got like this much fruit. Like we had a ridiculous amount of bananas and apples, and everyone was like, "Yeah, just have as much as you want." So we even had like some tomatoes and other red things for people. But yeah. It says, "My con snack is bags of homemade dried fruits with nuts, coconut shavings, Russian dry cookies, and M&Ms." I just didn't know you had Russian dry cookies. That sounds exciting.
I want to know what a Russian dry cookie is now as well.
Also, I go by the bed stand and eat the snacks left for volunteers.
Oh, you are part of the problem, Will. Come on,
I think that might have been because also of the winning the contest. That's allowed for very small number of people. But anyway, question of the day. What about you, Matt? What would you pick?
Oh, now I've made me question myself now, because you put up a really strong argument for fresh fruit there, and it's like, oh yeah, I should probably eat really more fresh fruit. It's really good for vitamin C, and like, yeah, I really probably should. I probably use fresh fruit actually though as well, because you have to. Because even if it's just sort of blueberries you put on some cereal, or if it's I mean, I love raspberries as well. I absolutely love raspberries. And if I could have infinite fresh fruit, it would have to be that infinite fresh fruit or infinite nuts. It's got to be infinite fresh fruit, right? Yeah, definitely fresh fruit.
And apparently, the Russian things are a cookie called Russisches Brot, which is like a dehydrated Lebkuchen cut into letters. Wow!
Oh, now I want to try them. That sounds fantastic.
Okay, over to you. What are you up to? You can share Botley if you want to. The question I always ask is, what are you up to after this show? I am probably going to be watching the second season of Alice in Borderland, the hyperviolent thing, see how that goes. I might play a bit more of Questable, and I might drop in with Adam from Harford, who is running a couple of Christmas gaming things today and tomorrow. And given that I'm not around with other people, and that is open to all, if you want to know about that, then I guess the easiest way to get in touch is to, if you can't find it, message me on Facebook, Bez Shahriari on Facebook, or on Twitter. But that's probably what I'm up to. What about you? Is there something that you want to do, something that you need to do, something that you want to share? I promise that I care. Matt.
Me, I am going to be looking at Jerusalem. I'm going to be looking at those files today because I promised Tony I would, and I haven't had a chance recently, so I will be doing some of that today. I'll doing some game design of some description or some games editing.
It's been a lovely chat. And to
It's been
recap and
fantastic,
wrap
thank
up
you.
before we finish up, we talked about the idea of game design not being the full-time job, talking about Magic the Gathering and being the representative on the phone for Wizards of the Coast and learning all the CCGs that were going on in 2013, joining in the redesign contest and thinking, what do Cara and Alan and Quinn's actually enjoy? Coming up with this amazing tagline, enjoying First Rats, enjoying Social Insects. We talked about books, Prague Cemetery, about CCGs in general, Hearthstone, Magic the Gathering, and VTES being, highly recommended to other players because VTES is multiplayer, no set rotation, and Magic the Gathering, Netrunner, and something that's discontinued and you can just buy a lot of for designers. We talked about reasons that you might want to join a redesign contest. We talked a bit about early memories. We talked about favorite games, and we just had a lovely chat about fruits and nuts.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Bez. Thank you very much for the invite.
Thank you for being here. And Mike says, will we be at Terracon? I am definitely planning to be at Terracon.
I will definitely be at Aircon.
Cool. And if you want to check me out, Stuff by Bez and Mike, I will message you to try and work out a thing to talk about VTES. If you want to check me out, as I said, Stuff by Bez everywhere else, stuffbybez.com/streams. Tomorrow, me and Matt are going to be really dissecting the redesign contest. I might have to check some stats with Alan Paul if Alan has access to those stats.
He's got a cracking memory. I'll dig through the prototype boxes and see if I can find some of the original stuff as well.
Share, spread the word, and if you would like to check out Matt online, Matt, where would you like to be found? I mean, I put a geek list of which is really fascinating, your life through some games, Tony's blog about the games that you're working on, and of course your own user mgreen02 on Board Game Geek.
Yeah, find me on Board Game Geek. That's probably the easiest way to do it. I don't have a massive online profile, but I'm on Facebook if you know where to find me and that sort of stuff. But yeah, send me a message through Board Game Geek or have a look at that. My Life with Woodworm is a bit personal, but go for it. If you really fancy delving into my psyche, then go for that one. You probably learn far too much about me. I think I'm just enticing stalkers at this point, Bez.
I mean, I think you've shared a lot less than what some people do.
Oh, okay.
But
okay.
Yeah, by some people.
Maybe I'm just more boring than other people. I mean, you do have to think of it both ways, right?
I'm aware that I share a ridiculous amount, but share, spread the word. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Thank you for the comments and the questions along the way. Most importantly, thank you, Matt. It has been a lovely chat. And the only thing left for me to say at this point is, as always, lots of love. And if you celebrate Christmas today, then have a wonderful one. Or if I'm not going to see you before tomorrow when you celebrate Christmas, or if you're celebrating Hanukkah, happy, I think, is it the 4th or 3rd? It's in the middle of Hanukkah, so whatever you're celebrating, have a lovely Saturday. Although it's not even Saturday, you might be watching this on a totally different day. Have a wonderful time. Enjoy your life. And bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go to bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, bye.